You're invited to come and see Laura Eisenhower live in Sedona, Arizona, April 10th through the 12th. Laura will be presenting about solar stargates, planetary alignments, and the ascension window. It's free to come and see her presentation. You can also reserve a cosmic astrology session with her. Laura offers soul-centered and intuitive astrology readings. She specializes in your soul path, physical health, clearing negative patterns, personal empowerment, sacred reunion, and relationships. She looks at a number of different charts, including a heliocentric chart. She's been doing readings for more than 20 years and also works with the Mother Peace Tarot deck and the Galactic Heritage deck to help one understand their origins and greater divine purpose. Register on the website at beyondthematrix.tv so that you can schedule your session with Laura in advance. During this Beyond the Matrix event and adventure, you can also sign up for tours into the Red Rocks with Star of Ancient Aliens Andrew Collins and Master Dowser Maria Wheatley. Please stay tuned for this fascinating interview with global alchemist and cosmic astrologer Laura Eisenhower. She is an internationally acclaimed speaker who has presented her work worldwide. She is considered by many to be one of North America's leading researchers on health, exopolitics, alchemy, metaphysics, and galactic history. Laura works to free us from the 3D holographic time loop, false archonic systems, and the military-industrial complex. She exposes hidden agenda so we can take our power back. Feeling a calling regarding her mission since she was a child, she's gained incredible insight through experience, psychic development, and research about how to guide us into higher earth energies. She has a deep understanding of Gaia Sophia and our divine blueprint and how they connect to the Venus transits, earth grids, global alchemy, DNA, ET races, and ascension. Her passion is to inspire unity consciousness and bring us back to the 0-point unified field, the totality of our divine powers. Enjoy our intriguing discussion and come see her live in Sedona, April 10th through 12th. Register today. Hello, and thanks so much for joining us for this fascinating discussion with my dear friend Laura Eisenhower, who will be offering a presentation and giving sessions at our upcoming Beyond the Matrix event Easter weekend right here in Sedona. Welcome, Laura.
Hey, Suzanne. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited that you'll be coming. I know you're going to be offering a fantastic presentation as usual. And then people will have the amazing opportunity to have sessions with you. It's going to be fantastic.
Yes, I'm so excited to come back to Sedona and meet everybody and be able to spend time with you again. I had a really incredible time last time when we toured around Sedona, and a lot of awesome people will be doing tours this time. And I'm excited to do a presentation and give people some exposure to my session space. I do galactic astrology and galactic heritage, tarot, and also I work with the Mother Peace. And go into the medical astrology aspect as well. So with all the ascension symptoms happening, it can be a very helpful tool.
I am sure I'll have to have a session of my own.
For sure.
That'd be fantastic. So tell us all about the presentation that you're going to be offering.
Yeah, well, I love to go into DNA and how that corresponds to Earth grids and our multidimensional cosmos, and also the activation of dormant chakras and how that can begin to upgrade our DNA and help us to unscramble the fire codes that have put a huge portion of our DNA in that junk category, which it actually is not junk at all. So I like to shed light on what that mystery is all about and how that relates to Gosh, the larger picture, this ascension window that we're in, things connected to timelines, and also what makes this particular window period so significant and why there's been so much attention on this particular time. So I've learned a lot about mitochondrial DNA, the fifth element, the mother energy, and also on an astrological level, what we as a humanity need to integrate and move into in order to really benefit from what's coming in on a cosmic and earthly level. We're in a very significant window where the geophysics of the planet is allowing for these stargates to open. This is why Sedona is such a significant location, and how that corresponds with our own, awakening. But of course, with awakening, there comes dark nights of the soul. There comes a lot of ascension symptoms and going into some territory that is very daunting and uncomfortable, that makes us wonder if we're on track or, what the heck might be going on. And so I help people to understand like medical astrology in the way that the planets and signs connect with our organs and connect with our energy circuitry, our chakras, and our glands, and how some of these symptoms definitely stem from blocks or resistances or ancestral patterns that are still like hooked into the control matrix. And so then there's the Saturn moon matrix component, and how the eclipse gateway we just went through and a lot of the alignments that are happening in the next year ahead and beyond is helping us to correct these distortions and how that's interfered with our ability to step into our higher potential. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. It goes a lot more in depth into some of the dark technologies and stuff like that, but mostly focused on the positive, because we're the most amazing thing that's unfolding right now if we can just keep it together.
And so this ability to activate our dormant DNA, and also it sounds like dormant chakras, which is the first time I've heard of that. I can't wait to hear more about that, is happening naturally due to this particular window, but you have the ability then to remove any ancestral blockages that could be preventing that from happening.
Yes, through bringing awareness to it through the chart, that really helps, but there's way more than just ancestral patterns. There's implants, there's ethereal implants, there are all sorts of things that we've taken into our bodies because of geoengineering, GMOs, the nanoparticles and chemtrails. And I know that's hard for some people to accept, that these sort of agendas are out there, but there's plenty of documentation and proof of what is in our soil and in the air, these heavy metals that we're breathing in, and how the nanoparticles can connect into the AI or potential 5G coming in. So as much as we have this incredible human potential, we seem to always have this villain breathing down our neck. And so I like to focus on how we can catalyze that for our awakening and leverage it, so we can become empowered instead of victimized, because allowing that to crush us during these times really allows that infection to actually get worse. We have to be aware of it, but we need to, integrate and connect with, what is, actually available. And so we always have that choice in our own lives, whether we're going to let our lower mind or our lower ego rule, or if we're going to allow our higher self to come into the physical plane and drive our vehicle, so to speak, and make choices for ourselves. So as much as it seems like, we're constantly assaulted, we do have a choice to decide what we're going to allow in and what we are going to put our belief system into. So, there's awareness, but then if we believe it has greater power over us, charts can really help us to see that, that dilemma that many humans are up against, and even the unconscious things they might not recognize are compromising them. So, yeah, it's great to see it on the macro level, looking at individual charts, and on a much larger level, because it goes way beyond what we might have been exposed to in the world of astrology. When we Google around on the internet and we see, things related to career and relationships and are you compatible and love signs, and that's all great, but it's very, very, very thin of very small of a layer compared to the fullness of what that information can give us. Because we have 12 strand and beyond capacity, and it shows us 12 houses, 12 signs. And ever since 2010, the sun started to move through a 13th sign. And there's a lot of significance surrounding the number 13. And that 13th sign actually connects with the ether and the mitochondrial DNA, and how that has been so damaged in humans, and how that is healing right now with the presence of the mother back in the earth body, activating as a diamond heart, and, shifting the grids and Stargate energies. But the thing is, if we're not conduits, if we don't allow this energy flow through us, then we are walking sort of, blockages to, the greater potential of the collective. And we need to take it upon ourselves. Each one of us has that purpose to do the work necessary to release those hooks and to step into these powerful initiations that society really takes advantage of. If we look at medical industry, not all of it, but a lot of it, and just what we see in the news, it's really targeting our fears and where we're disempowered. And when it begins to infect our creative channels, then that's where we're in trouble. And so it's really, important for us to understand how to work with these initiations without losing it and then giving our power away and maybe going on a pharmaceutical instead of breathing through it, finding support and assistance, and coming out the other end that much more sovereign, that much more awake, and that much more grounded in our true, nature. And so the issue with these outer planets, which are very initiatory, is it can cause people to feel like they're going crazy. They're having nervous breakdowns. They might feel like they want to die because, Pluto transits take us right into the underworld. And there's not a whole lot of help when you're in that zone. And so there's a lot of programs and things that are set up to stunt our growth when those initiations are ready. And we're not educated enough, and we don't have enough time to get to know ourselves to be able to understand those moments and say, oh, okay, I'm just going through an initiation. Instead, we get a diagnosis, maybe for some mental illness or some physical ailment. And then all of a sudden, it's like we're not operating in our own capacity to heal, regenerate, and grow and transform. And so I want to help return people to that natural ability and flow so that when adversity comes up, we can get closer to ourselves and get to know ourselves better instead of fall into the trap of getting more and more disassociated to the point where somebody is telling us, how we should go about resolving it and what we should take to numb out or get rid of the symptoms, which are actually very important messengers. So the chart really helps us to switch the lights on. And I never expected that I would end up utilizing it so much in my life. And it's just grown over the years. So I always incorporate it into my readings when I talk about galactic history, because it reveals a lot about where we've been and where we're heading.
And so then once people know their chart, they can be better prepared for the onslaught of energies, and then you give them tools and techniques to work with those?
Yeah. So for example, if, Saturn's crossing over a person's sun sign and their sun sign naturally makes a difficult aspect to Chiron, the wounded healer, they might go through a period of feeling really, really stuck in old wounds that they thought they cleared. Or there might be some event that takes place with an outer authority or something with their father or even mother. I mean, it's not gender specific. It's just more of a vibration. Or somebody might be having a progression where their sun moves next to Uranus. I just did a session about that, and the person had tics, and they had almost feeling like they were getting Tourette's because their nervous system couldn't handle integrating it. Because normally their astro chart, their natal chart, is very much earth dominated and very much about practicality. So a person that's very used to being practical, that all of a sudden gets blown open by Uranus, sometimes their nervous system can't handle it. They don't know what's happening. Some people have been diagnosed with neurological diseases and been given information that almost sets them up for completely bypassing what is actually happening. Sometimes we might go through a period where our body is reacting in a way where it might look like it could be a long-term ailment, but very often these things only last a short amount of time, maybe a couple months. And the quicker we understand the message, the quicker we understand the energy that's hitting us, the less we're sort of in a power struggle or a state of confusion trying to solve it. So, telling the person, okay, that's Uranus and it's an electrical energy and it's like lightning bolts. And the key is to just ground, walk barefoot, go into a meditation zone, maybe take some time off and go travel and do a reset where you feel freedom, because Uranus is the great liberator. That old constricted way or that practical lifestyle, it doesn't accommodate that anymore. But if we don't know that we're going through a shift and something is wanting to open up, or a whole nother door wants to open up to us, then we might feel afraid of it. We might not feel like we have permission. We might be afraid of what family members think, or we might feel like we actually have acquired some sort of major, illness. And in some cases there are, of course, I got a lot of clients that have Lyme's, and, there are other things like that, but it can also give clues about how that person's going to handle a particular illness. And a lot of times there's two choices, one that can be very detrimental and kind of waste their time and take them in places they don't need to go. And then very often there's a lifeline of support that if I can help, put their awareness on that, they can begin to notice the synchronicities that are going to support their healing, instead of the social engineering and mind control programs that could potentially compromise that person even further. And one of the hardest parts is we're dealing with friends and family that are holding on to things that might not be accommodating. So very often the blocks aren't even ours. They're blocks that are put in our space by people that have mastered the art of trying to make you feel stupid if you think outside the box. And so, it shows deep sort of psychological issues that are somewhat hidden, things that are about to be switched on. And I find it, a really, remarkable tool. A person doesn't necessarily need to know their chart, because they're going to be feeling these aspects anyway. And if they're already connected to their own authenticity and truth, they can go through these different phases and times without getting too caught in a tangle. But it's not very easy for a lot of people, because this is multi-generational. This has been thousands of years of trauma, conditioning, Project Mockingbird through the media that has been very geared towards creating or controlling the narrative. And so it helps us to see, what is the state of our mental body? Are we in ownership of our minds? How much are we living in accordance to our greater soul mission? Or, what pieces have bled through from previous lifetimes that are wanting to get our attention, that we might, feel like we're cursed and not understand, because it doesn't make any sense to the life that we've been living. So yeah, it really does switch the lights on. And I think in turn that helps us to upgrade our DNA, because everything that's dormant is just unconscious. It hasn't been awoken yet. And the minute we give it attention, then all of a sudden, we recognize that what's unconscious is actually layers upon layers of multidimensional awareness and a greater embodiment that helps remind us we're so much more than we ever thought. Unfortunately, it gets a lot of criticism. Like astrology has been considered a pseudoscience. A lot of these terminologies people think is woo-woo. They don't understand that there's legit science behind it. And also that the physics is different in higher dimensions, and our capacity to transmute and alchemize toxicity and a lot of these things that we're up against is far greater, particularly in this window. So when we hear things about a pandemic or an outbreak, we might go into a past life memory of remembering, some sort of major catastrophe. There's tons of movies about all this kind of stuff too that can get us in that survival chakra. But we have to realize that what we're stepping into is bringing us into a greater ability to override this than ever before. We're a lot more co-creative and a lot more activated as a collective conscious to be able to steer this ship in a better direction. We just have to really be careful. It doesn't mean turn a blind eye, but we have to be very careful. Fear can be helpful to keep us cautious and to keep us on our toes, but it should only be for that. And the rest of it should be geared towards how can we co-create a beautiful reality for ourselves and really come together and bring our energies in more oneness and unity, because one of the biggest targets is to conquer and divide us through politics and through different movements. And it's a lot easier than we think, but it's freaking complicated too at the same time.
You talked about dormant chakras, and I've heard through Drunvalo Melchizedek's work about the 13 chakras. Can you tell me more about dormant chakras and how do we activate those?
Well, they're not necessarily dormant. It depends. Some people can be very activated in their galactic and have a really hard time being in the earth plane. So they might be one of those like really out there people trying to get into their body. And then there's other people that are very, very grounded, not necessarily with nature, but maybe with the matrix. They can function as in the human form, no problem, but they might not have any access to going beyond the 7 chakras into, more. We have feet chakras, hand chakras. Some say we have far more than I even bring up. But I only go maybe, I concentrate mostly on the main ones. And so what's dormant for one might not be dormant for another, but very often people will gravitate towards what they might be missing. So that's the whole opposites attract. So maybe a really grounded person, like I know a lot of people who, and me included, who are really out there, and we need people that are rocks. We need people that can like function in the human realm to give us an anchor point to the earth. Even if we might be connected to earth, it might be a higher harmonic universe earth. I mean, there's a lot of people coming in to help in this awakening time, which like you and the people that you bring into the conferences, and a lot of the people that come that have come in to help support during this time. Some may have been here for thousands of years and have been guardians of the organic ascension timeline for a long time. Some might have not been in the earth plane for a while and have come in, just, to really help during this time. So what is dormant for one might not be for another. So we're here to activate one another. The whole idea of the root races and the cloister races way back when we sank down into this lower density was that we would learn to rebuild our DNA over the course of time by coming together and sharing codes, sharing information, and helping to switch each other on. But it's almost like we're being kept from it until we learn the right use of power, and we learn to not allow this conquer and divide agenda to keep us in separation, because in separation, we aren't really able to provide the gifts for each other. So if we look at somebody's zodiac, they're gonna have a predominance of earth, air, fire, water. Some are concentrated in way more of one element than another. Some are kind of scattered around. But very often we need to find something that helps us to integrate polarity. So dormant chakras for maybe the more mainstream kind of world, more than likely are dormant. So when I said that in the beginning, it's not like a generality. But when we start to move beyond the 7th chakra, we go into 8 and 9. 8 and 9 is very interesting because our chakras correspond with the stargates on the earth. The chakras 8 and 9 are actually connected to the area of China and Tibet where this outbreak is happening, which is kind of interesting because this is a big time for us to begin to step into that energy and to begin to light up those energy centers. And actually it activates the infinity spiral in our auric field and helps us to advance our human vessel, going from carbon-based to crystalline. It's an alchemical shift. And obviously it's not going to happen overnight. That's why some people kind of blow this info off. It's like, I'm not feeling anything. It's like, well, it can't happen overnight. It's a slow process, and some people's physical bodies might not make it through the gateways. As long as their consciousness doesn't matter. They'll pick up another skin suit later on, and maybe a completely different type than the one that they carried here. So the consciousness part is the most important. Integration in the physical plane, of course, will help our physical bodies. But anyway, so this 8th and 9th chakra connect with the base of the skull, and that's where a lot of us have been implanted from the times of Atlantis so that we would have a real hard time activating this. A lot of the programmings in our culture are trying to keep us from this. And so very often when a person is about to activate it, they'll start to have an increase in psychic attack. And then they'll feel very defeated and they'll just give up. And they'll say, gosh, I thought I was on the spiritual path and now I'm back to square one. I've lost everything. Relationships get targeted. Old wounds can get targeted, and it usually gets amped up when we're about to really take a huge leap. Same thing with humanity. When we're about to take a huge leap as a collective, usually a false flag happens or some sort of virus, the one that is going on, but like a mind virus. Now it's like an actual virus, which happens very often in our human history, to really throw it off. So instead of taking that huge leap, we're just back in our survival chakra, and then, we're kind of caught in the loop again. So we have to break this cycle. With this kind of staring us in the face, these sort of concerns and fears, how can we break that cycle and come together as a humanity to recognize that, there's a part of us feeding into it as well. Our capacity to override all of this is incredibly high, and the earth is filled with medicines and cures that we need to get in touch with that are beyond what the conventional world offers us. So once we activate the 8th and 9th, the actual frequency behind it is sacred union. It's the second level of the masculine and feminine coming back into balance. So I've done a lot of presentations called DNA, the love story of creation, because it really holds the happily ever after of the authentic masculine and feminine, what some might say is Christ Sophia, or that divine template, the right and left circulating beautifully together to clear our chakras and keep them clear so that we can create this kind of inner reunion and see how the outer world mirrors that back to us through the type of people we meet. And so everybody we meet gives us the opportunity to remember who we are. And some that might want to try and lead us astray can help us to wake up too. The hope is that they won't get away with leading any of us astray for too long. But so it's all about the masculine and feminine. It's all about the 12 masculine and 12 female codons in the DNA beginning to reconnect, which resolves the scrambled fire codes in our DNA. And then when we get to the highest level, which is the avatar consciousness, that's actually considered the Hyros Gamos and the ultimate of sacred union and twin flame energy, which is something we experience on our own personal path. So our consciousness can be there. You know, we can float into those higher chakras all the time where they're not dormant at all. I think a lot of us have been in those places very often. And that's what gives us the desire to find true love or be on that quest for our deepest soul longing, which has memories of who we used to be and what we're capable of and what our greater embodiments can be. But the challenge is to teach this physical density how to bring it in. So a lot of times people might live a dual life where they go into that zone and they can connect to it, but then they go back to the career they don't like, to maybe toxic friends or family members that they're afraid to be themselves with. And so that's where we can break the, I guess, mind control is a strong word, but you know, to a certain degree, that's what it is. That's where we can begin to break it in our everyday. How can we shift the physical plane through letting go of those toxic attachments? Doesn't mean abandon family, but maybe some of them could be better off like a little bit more at a distance. How can we recover our own self-worth and have self-worth on our own terms instead of what was taught us? Like you have to have this to be worth anything in the world, you know? And so all that early conditioning has thrown off our capacity to even have a healthy sense of self-worth. And there's a lot of misplaced insecurities of really advanced souls that are just completely lost, not appreciated, projected upon. And a lot of people in school systems or guidance counselors or teachers or whatever who suggest that they should be medicated. So this box that we've been born into needs to be blasted open. And so each of us needs to focus on that every day. You know, what agreements and attachments do we still have that are preventing us from thriving and growing? And can we give ourselves permission to let those things go or form a boundary? And that's how we change Saturn, which has been very, very dark for thousands of years. And so with the conjunction of Saturn-Pluto right now, that was peaking in mid-January, and the presence of Jupiter and some of the alignments that'll be taking place, Saturn's actually going through an alchemical shift. So the way we relate to the law of structure and the world around us is going from old paradigm to new paradigm. This is our chance to dump the old attachments, the things that we've been passed down. Because the thing is, we can inherit something on an ancestral level that we have nothing to do with. We could have had, you know, family members that were caught in some really negative belief systems. And then, you know, later it became a behavior pattern because, you know, maybe, you know, you're not going to reincarnate in like the Puritans or whatever, or, you know, people that, family members that might have raped and pillaged in previous lifetimes. You're not going to inherit that tendency, but you might inherit a physical issue that is still holding on to a piece of that program. And it might not be something you would ever consider doing, but the genetic damage might be there because it has to start with energy. It has to start with belief systems, behavior patterns. And once it falls unconscious and it gets passed down, instead we're getting genetic damage, instead of understanding the root of why that damage took place, which very often is due to being in the karmic grid and doing things that degrade our connection to source. When we're connected to source, we have integrity. We're not going to go out and kill and do, you know, evil acts. And of course, then you got those in history that have been on the other side of it and been victimized. And so that trauma gets passed down generation to generation. Most people are a mixed bag and have worn a bunch of different hats, but I know I'm kind of giving long-winded answers here, but it's in our everyday that we heal. From the minute we wake up and observe, you know, how we're feeling, what were our dreams, what is the first thing we're going to put in our body, what is the first energy that we feel when we wake up to the day, and begin to like break it down a little bit and really put a magnifying glass on it to make those subtle changes so that we find like 1 week might have been really revealing of how imbalanced and how much of a train wreck we might be. And then the next week, by observing it and making subtle changes, and doing affirmations and meditating and putting the right foods in our body, we can go from 0 to 60 and be a completely transformed person. I think a lot of people think awakening is you have to know the conspiracy theories or buy into them. You're not awake or you're not woke. But, you know, it's being conscious in our every moment that is the real awakening right now. And the information that we're ready for will come, but we got to start with that kind of foundation.
Yes, I couldn't agree more that awakening is something that can happen gradually over time. And it's a matter of being aware of it in every moment of every day, living in that higher consciousness, not just being aware, but doing the self improvement and the self reflection and certainly the meditation and affirmations. So, thank you so much for that. And it sounds like you really help people let go of a lot of what has been holding them back.
Yeah, I think people, just having a hello, knowing that somebody can see you, and you're not crazy. And I remember when I was going through my dark night of the souls and these big initiations, and it really pulled me out of being able to be around anybody or even like go to school or high school. I said, if I ever make it out or survive this, I'm going to dedicate my life to helping people. We can't do it for them, but, just being a presence, being there and helping them gain clarity. I was like, man, if I could just have like that one person that I would be so grateful. And now, of course, there's major community ever since social media, and none of us are alone anymore. So, I think just, that acknowledgement makes it more real, or else it's just swirling around people's head. And then negative thoughts are knocking down the ones that are actually really good because they're not having a chance to really feel like it's legit or validated, or they might think that when they get a glimpse of their greater and more advanced self, they think it might be their ego. They think they might just be full of it, and they can dismiss it and go back into just a place of depression and just stagnation.
Again, I think that's why the charts are so incredibly effective, because then you help them understand that there's a reason for what they're feeling and going through, and it's not just them going crazy.
Yeah. And I like it too because I give them back to themselves. I don't really give advice unless I'm asked, but I just, it's like, here's you that I get to give back to you. So it's definitely a helpful tool. There are a lot of amazing tools and modalities out there. So I give a lot of referrals because, there's only so far that astrology can go. But once the lights are really on and then a person really knows, okay, well, this is where I need support most of my life, then I can, help them find ones that are specializing in those certain areas. And so I'm building a page on my website of, people that are doing, that kind of stuff. And so I've started to just, pull that together. And
Community is the most amazing aspect of this whole ascension and awakening that humanity is going through. Thank you so much for all you do, Laura. I am so excited that you're going to be coming to our event and presenting and offering sessions. We're delighted to have you. And everybody just go to beyondthematrix.tv to sign up for our Beyond the Matrix event. Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Thanks, everybody. See you there.